I'm not a candidate.
You want me to work that for you?
As my kids would say, that's my jam.
The South is actually very comfortable with our history. What I should have said immediately was that the Civil War was about slavery. But I just assumed that that was a given, and I went on and said it was also about the role of government and about the rights of people, economically, socially, and otherwise. But Harris, really, the media is the only one that has talked about this issue.
No, that's actually
not
not
person
true.
on.
That's Nikki Haley continuing to flail following last week, her multiple times failing to just easily and clearly identify that slavery was the driver of the Civil War. And now she wants to move on. That's literally what she's saying to the media is we're moving on. First of all, when you have a scandal, it's not up to you when you get to move on. I know that you'd like to move on. You'd love to move on. It'd be very convenient to move on, but it's not up to you. And so she doesn't want the campaign to come down to this. And I understand that one answer to one question, you might be frustrated if that's what people focus on. But the issue is that that's also not an accurate representation of what happened. She has been getting this wrong for years, literally like 7 years ago, she was asked, and she again refused to identify that slavery was the driver of that. And at the end of the day, that's not fundamentally the problem. It's what it reveals. It's what it reveals about what she thinks about the Republican electorate, about what she's willing to do or not to challenge some of the darkest impulses of that Republican primary. I think it is totally appropriate that people continue to ask her questions about this because she's just flailed and evaded ever since. Even that answer right there does not take responsibility for the fact that she danced around identifying slavery. When she initially said the thing about blah, blah, vague freedom, blah, liberties, the guy said, well, what about slavery? And she said, well, what do you want me to say about slavery? That was not a woman who had just been reminded, oh, sorry, I thought that was obvious. Obviously, it's about slavery. She was defensive and evasive in response to it. So don't allow her to rewrite history with Harris Faulkner there. We have more video from her, but Trae, what do you make of this?
Yeah, I don't believe for a second that it was like a one-time mistake. I mean, this has been like chapter 1 Old South playbook for a long time as a Southerner. I mean, I could tell you, it's like it's been, I mean, it was like, I remember I was in a college history class, but like a freshman level US history class in college. And like the professor, this was in Cookeville, Tennessee, by the way, at like a Cal college. And the professor, like, we're about to start talking about the Civil War. And he like made this big elaborate, like, disclaimer or apology. He was like, I know that this is going to be difficult for many of you to hear. I understand this is going to be hard. I don't want to, like, he goes this elaborate thing. And then he's like, but the Civil War was about slavery, right? He had to like frame it that way because he knew it would be such a controversial statement in that setting or whatever. Because, we were all like a lot of everybody from the South of a certain age and before had been heard different versions of, states' rights, of course, and that type of thing. And so like, it's been going on for a long time. I'm kind of only surprised that it's like actually a scandal for her now. Like even like from Fox News and whatnot, I didn't know that they had even come around to that being a bad thing to do. So I guess I'm a little bit encouraged by that. But yeah, they still also cling to like, oh, actually slavery and the Civil War, all that was actually all Democrats, right? Which is, of course, is like technically true because that was before the parties flipped ideologically, but they always ignore that part. Like, Lincoln was Republican. The Democrats did all that and then just ignore the fact that now it's the Republicans who argue to keep the Confederate monuments up and the Democrats are trying to take them down and all of that. They just like pick and choose which parts of it they throw out there. So this is all stuff that's been going on in the South for a really long time. And like I said, the only thing that I find it all surprising about this with her is that it actually is like bringing some heat on her for having done it. Like I'm kind of surprised that people care on the right, but I'm glad to hear it. So
yeah. Yeah, I think I think part of the reason that Fox is willing to criticize her is criticizing her potentially helps Donald Trump.
Donald Trump, right. Exactly.
They have different objectives in criticizing her than us. And yes, it is unfortunate that I don't like to be kind of by accident allies with an effort to help Donald Trump, but I'm not gonna just give a pass to Nikki Haley because not doing so, like helps Trump or whatever. Like we should critique both of them. They both would be horrible presidents.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.